This is the Incongruous channel, and I'm Dr. Andy Yates, and it's my pleasure to be here once again, doing a download, a thought dump if you like, on the show I did on Saturday on Beetroot Radio, which is community radio for Rushden and the Nen Valley. And the show I did was on spiders, and I thought I'd title this one, Spiders, UK Spiders, Are We Doomed? Because according to some of the newspapers, we are doomed. And by the way, what has this got to do with Brexit? What has this got to do with prorogation? What has this got to do with the Supreme Court? The answer's nothing. This is a vacation, a holiday from all that stuff, and it's wonderful. Okay. And and everything's a bit low tech because I've been on an expedition, you might say, up to the Wold Newton Triangle, Roslyn Chapel, places like that, all of which will be coming out in my shows. So check me out, www.beetrootradio.co.uk. Also, then the podcasts go onto my website, www.drandyyates.com. And there you go. I mean, it'll all be on there. It's easy to access, easy to see, and you can listen 7x24. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? I think I've got a fly that's bothering me. Okay, so here we are again talking about spiders. And they talked about the kind of thing of a spider invasion. Now, spiders are kind of creepy, aren't they? I wonder why we're so creeped out by spiders, because they're only little, really, in this country anyway. But let's talk about, in fact, let's start with a story. So the other day, the evening, She Who Must Be Obeyed told me, sorry if the curtain's moving, it's not speaking. Of course, it's my dogs going back and forth doing their little doggy stuff. I shut the curtains to keep the light out, and they sort of stick their nose in and say, "Can I come in? Is it all right?" Anyway. So she said to me, "Oh, there's a big spider in the bathroom, but I've lost track of it." And I'm like, okay, if I see it, I'll sort it out. Didn't see it. So the next morning, I washed my face. I picked up the face towel to dry myself off, and this big spider ran across my face, over my head. And I went, whoa, like this, as you would, right? And it dropped on the floor. Then I went downstairs, got a big pint glass, put the pint glass on top of the spider without breaking its legs, slid a card underneath, right? So glass card, flipped it up, made sure the spider was down in the bottom of the glass, not hanging onto the cardboard, took it off to the garage and let it go. Why would I do that? Well, number one, I'm not going to kill anything unless I have to, or unless it's a direct threat to me. The other thing is, I mean, this guy, it was a male Tegenaria domestica, which I would call a house spider domestica, right? A big one. But how did I know it was male? Well, the females have things that are called pedipalps, which kind of hang over their head like this. They're bigger than that, but they look a bit like fingers, that kind of thing. And they're just straight like this on the female. On the male, there's like a bulb on the end of these things, right? Get it? So, and all I'll say is that's part of their sexual reproduction process. That's what they use them for. Done deal. So I knew it was a male. He's out looking for love, that's all. It was, I don't know, Friday night or something. He was just out cruising, looking for a bit of a good time, right? So I just put him in the garage. Now, interestingly enough, two days later, in the sink in the kitchen, I found a bigger version. The body was probably a tiny bit smaller, but the legs were fully 3-4 inches, this kind of distance, if the legs stuck out of the side. Big spider. That one was Tegenaria gigantica, I think it is. Actually, I've probably got it in my notes here. Shall I have a quick look? I don't like looking at my notes on the YouTube video, but I do like to... oh, it's not in here. Whatever. Anyway, Tegenaria gigantica, that'll do. So, and I did the same thing. Glass card into the garage. Because that one's got longer legs, that's why it's called gigantica, but I don't think the body of the spider is quite as big. And the relevance of what story I've just told you will come into effect a little bit later on in this little YouTube video. Okay. So what I found interesting with doing my research on spiders for the show, because I researched dangerous spiders, spiders around the world, the tarantula, the black widow, all these different kinds of ones, the famous ones, right? I discovered that there were some problems in the well, not problems, but as a kid, I always thought spiders in the UK couldn't bite you. And once I had read a book on spiders that told me how to tire out a spider without hurting it by putting it in the bath and letting it run around. And then you could let it run on your fingers and you could get used to bigger and bigger spiders until you could pick up generally any old spider. With the knowledge that they couldn't bite you. Well, of course they could. Big spider can bite you. And if they're big enough and strong enough to get their fangs through your skin, they can envenomate you. But generally speaking, the venom is only like a bee sting. All right? Now, bee sting's painful, but it's not deadly, going to knock you down dead. Something like the Sydney funnel-web spider, the Australian Sydney funnel-web spider, could kill you. And that's why they have ventivenom and stuff like this. Killed quite a few people. Do you get the idea? Now, so what about this country? Well, there's been a few, the newspapers, and this is, I don't know why it's a surprise to me, but they really, really go out of their way to print false news, to misdirect, to bend things around like this, to scare the pants off us. Well, why? It does seem a bit irresponsible to me. Gosh, haven't we got enough, kind of bigger issues to worry about? But no, they do. They go absolutely crazy about it. And, reading direct quote from a newspaper, I won't bash a newspaper too much because they got big lawyers. But they said, there's the little dog, Brits are being left in excruciating agony because of life-threatening false widow spider bites, whose flesh-eating venom has left victims permanently disabled and even ended their lives. Total lies. Total lies. It's a pack of lies. Their flesh-eating venom does not eat flesh. Doesn't. Okay? Now, does that mean they're okay? No, not really. I mean, again, a bite can cause some kind of, the venom can cause like a bee sting. You could be allergic to it. Very, very rare, but you could be. And if you're allergic to it, basically your own body can turn on itself and give you allergic or anaphylactic symptoms. Now, you can also get sepsis or septicemia. And that can be deadly, true enough, if it's not taken care of. And after all, we have the emergency room, we have, all kinds of support and stuff like this. There's no reason why it should, as long as you get off your backside. I've been bitten by a spider. Oh, look, it's starting to go red. I'll go to the ER. There you go. That's my advice too. You get bitten by a spider and you think it might be a problem, or if it is a problem, or you're just worried about it, go to the ER. There you go. Immediately. Don't wait. Don't wait until your finger starts turning a funny colour. Because if your finger starts turning a funny colour, you have got sepsis. And sepsis can be deadly. Not the spider bite, but the sepsis. Because you could get that from a mosquito bite. Because you've got one on your face and you just keep picking at it and getting that dirt that's under your fingernail and just shoving it into your face and putting that into your bloodstream. Wow. And especially if you've got a compromised immune system, young, old, sick, right? Get that dirt in there. Get that dirt in. Get all that bacteria and filth in there. Yeah, let's get that in. You're going to have a problem. That's what sepsis is. But it just got me that the newspapers, supposed to be responsible news. No, they're not. They're absolutely not. And I do question why people give so much validation and reality to what they print. Because if they'll lie about this spider stuff, they would lie about anything, wouldn't they? Political situation, Brexit, whatever. As of right now, quote, experts are warning the threat from false widows is higher than ever before as the country is overrun with the lethal critters. Have you ever seen one? Probably not. They are from the Canary Islands and Madeira, and they have come in the south of England, probably through ports down there, especially around London and across a bit, and Leicester. There you go. And but they're not that dangerous more than our own spiders, because if you were bitten by one of our own spiders, you could, that have been here for thousands of hundreds of thousands of years, you could have the same problem, right? So it talks about a young dad who was left suffer weeks of agony, unable to walk. And sure enough, he got a nasty sore on his leg. I'm not surprised. He was in a lot of pain and stuff. Horrible thing. Because of that sepsis. Was it caused by a spider bite? Well, his kid had bites all over the legs. I'm not an expert. Looks a lot like mosquito bites or flea bites. Well, he's not really going to admit flea bites to a newspaper. And the kid didn't have a reaction, but he did. And it was horrid and it was nasty, and I feel sorry for the guy. So don't get me wrong there. Was it the spider? How did he know it was the spider? And how did he know it was a false noble spider? Because there was no photograph of the spider that bit him. And it bit his kid. Someone somewhere had assumed or said, you know what? If we say this is the false noble spider, we'll sell another 100,000 newspapers. Yeah. Yeah. So, have we got to worry about them? Because they did the same thing about the brown recluse spider. It said somewhere in the newspaper, a little girl thought she'd been bitten by a brown recluse spider. And then in the next sentence, they talked about a wave of these spiders coming across the UK. And I would ask you, have you ever heard of a brown recluse spider? Because a brown recluse spider is pretty much exclusive to the south part of the United States, generally the south and southeast. Where I lived in the southwest, we had our own version, which was called the Arizona brown. Nasty spider. Little one. But bites and can cause problems if you have an allergic reaction to them. To the venom, right? But generally speaking, bee sting. All right? Another one they made, which is kind of amusing in a way, they made a big fuss about, that was taking over the country, a tsunami of spiders, was the Brazilian wandering spider, which comes from Brazil, yep, and it wanders. In other words, it doesn't make a web or anything like this. It just wanders about in the leaf litter on the bottom of the jungle floor, sees something it thinks it would like to eat, jumps on it. So it's quite aggressive. Somebody found one, I think, in a bunch of bananas. Well, okay. This big old spider, and they're big, so they're like 6 inches, about that. And they can bite, and they can kill. But again, the venom may cause sepsis, whatever. But they only get imported. They don't live here. This is such a different environment from Brazil. They wouldn't survive here anyway. The point about the false noble black widow spider is that they have taken up residence. They find this an okay place to live in the south. All right? But with the Brazilian wandering spider, well, actually, going back to the brown recluse spider, how did the little girl know it was a brown recluse spider? Because you haven't even heard of one. And the reason is because somebody either said, here's an identification book of spiders, or more likely, she got bitten, gone down to the emergency room, something like this. Somehow a newspaper had got involved. Whoa, that might be the brown recluse spider. What did it look like? That's a brown spider. You know, we got plenty of them. And then, next thing you know, it's a tidal wave of brown recluse spiders moving across the country. One possible sighting that may have caused a bite. You know, what court would accept that as evidence? But you don't need that when you've got a inflammatory article in a newspaper. Yeah? See where I'm going? So there we are. And the one with the Brazilian wandering spider, the reason that was big time in the newspapers was because one of the side effects of a bite can be a very painful erection in a male, obviously, that can last for hours. You can imagine the newspapers. These are the newspapers with a naked woman on page 3, right? You can imagine how they love that. And maybe there were 1 or 2 people in the country who said, I wonder if it hurts that much. Because a painful erection for a couple of hours? Oh, that might be pretty good. So I don't know. But anyway, just supposing. So back to the noble widow spider. And this really amused me because they had an expert, of course. And this was Professor Rainer Breitling from University of Manchester. So a real bona fide expert. And they said in their article, he studied the spread of false widows. And they said, he said, right? They said, he said. So that's not valid, legal, or anything like that. They said, he said, spiders like to move to an area with lots of vulnerable animals to attack. Not true. An animal is generally a mammal. And they don't attack mammals. They're only little, sort of this size. They don't attack animals. Animals would be a mouse, a squirrel, a rabbit, us. No. They might defend against us if they think we're going to tread on them or something like this. Well, they wouldn't even know that. They would feel pain and bite. They would feel threatened and bite. If you don't threaten them, they're not going to bite. In fact, they're so small that if one was walking across your hand, it wouldn't know that your hand was anything other than a regular old surface. Problem is, and it's a real problem, if one got in your bed and you rolled over at night and rolled on the spider, it's going to defend itself. It's going to bite. Just like my reaction to the spider coming over my head, I pushed it away. I didn't slap at it to squash it. I pushed it away because having lived 20 years in Arizona in the USA, where there's a lot of things like scorpions, you don't press them against you because they will sting you. You like to push them off you. And then you can see what it is and say, oh, that's a scorpion, I need to deal with it. You get the idea. Yeah, of course you do. So that's the thing. This Professor Breitling from the University of Manchester, I've told you what the paper said he said. Now, this is what they quoted him as saying, because that's a different thing. That's like a legal statement. The potential production of Steodata nobilis, that's the name of the spider, which can overcome prey much larger than its own size, is quite worrying. Much larger, this big, that big. Insects, right? Although its bite can be very painful, this is the professor going on, in that same newspaper that talked about the wave of people dying from this thing, he said, although its bite can be very painful, comparable to a severe bee or wasp sting, there are no confirmed cases of serious medical consequences from a noble false widow bite. And that was in February this year. None. So all this stuff about tidal waves of killing frogs and end their lives and stuff, and the photographs that they're showing, well, because a lot of the photographs, you could put a photograph in there and say, this is what a spider bite looks like. You could kind of almost put anything in there. Because you haven't said it is a spider bite. You said it's what a spider bite looks like. You get what I mean? So there's all kinds of games a journalist at these wonderful newspapers can put together. That's what they get paid for, increasing the readership and so on and so forth. And what I will say to you is, I'm sorry, one last thing. The reason that they're not really a problem, the false widow spider, is because the big spiders that live in our house, like the one that went across my head and the one I found in the sink, would eat them and would kill them and eat them. Because our spiders will keep the foreign spiders out. I'm not going to say any more on that analogy, right? So that's what that's about. You just got to bear in mind that if a newspaper will put a bunch of rubbish like that out, then they'll also tell you a bunch of rubbish about more important things. Brexit, government, legislation, stuff like that. There we are. My name's Dr. Andy Yates. This is the Incongruous channel, and please take care.